master this lecture to the end. So thanks again to organizers and for all of you to invite me to give a speech about this very interesting topic for me. As Sarah says, the topic is the Global Antiquities case study of the public reflection. And I will start with this image that I took. Actually, one student took this image during my class. I had classes called Global Ancient Worlds, and actually we are doing comparative research of China, India, Persia, Greece, Rome, and Mayans, and this is the idea what students should know after this class. And one of my students says, is it everything? I said, of course, it's not everything. It's just beginning. So I put it as a part of this beginning of my lecture, how actually we should try to think about the global antiquities. As we know, the global antiquities is pretty new concept, started parallelly in the different parts of the world, including Stanford University by Walter Scheidel, then McGill University, where they had global antiquities project, and I took their actually definition here, as you can read here about those aspects of the practices and different parts of the global ancient worlds, and also by Global Antiquities Journal by University of Pittsburgh. As far as I know, it is still in the process. It is not published yet, but it could be. So the questions how we should unite approaches and methodologies for different parts of ancient world. And this should be the key question for this kind of lecture, and I will try to answer by actually approaches and methodologies that I should try to emphasize by using archaeological and historical materials in the global antiquity. I just want to emphasize as well that from this kind of lecture, I will focus on Afro-Eurasia, which does not mean that this is only part of the global ancient world, because at the same time, very important political entities have been in the Central or South America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, etc. But for this kind of lecture, I will not focus on them. So as I said, I will use the comparative approach, and basically I will focus on the four regions. One is East Asia, particularly Han Dynasty in China. Another is South Asia, particularly Mauryan Empire in India. Then it's Iranian Plateau, where I will try to focus on Sasanian Empire, and Mediterranean area, where I will try to focus mostly on the Roman Empire. So as you can say, I mentioned multiple times the word empire, so which means that my approach will try to emphasize the issues of actually empire and those imperial politics and policies. So what is the theoretical background that I would like to emphasize today? There are a few of theoretical backgrounds that I would like to work on. The first is developed, of course, by Michel Foucault about governmentality, on the ways or actually arts of governing, and the ways how the new ideas in the empire should be spread around the empire from different parts of empire, different regions, and different social groups, which is also related to production of knowledge, which actually connects two ideas of Foucault, one by governmentality and another one by power and knowledge, because by Foucault's idea, the power has been related to the construction of knowledge, and actually power constructs the knowledge and control the knowledge for the society. And this is very important way that I would like to apply this, because this knowledge is partly related not just to physics and optics or nature itself, but also to controlling of these reflection processes. And furthermore, I use the idea of Elliot Aronson, where it is connection between the mirrors and the obeying the rules, where the group of people around Aronson choose some modern example, contemporary example actually, about the mirrors in the small fruit shops, where those persons, those buyers come and see their own reflection in the mirrors, and then according to their psychological test, they are more often obeying the rules and they will not steal. This obeying the rules is also a very important element for understanding this concept today of public reflection, and I will speak later. I also put a few words about Paola Varsano and her paper dedicated to mirrors in early China, where she set up the 6 potential ways of the mirrors. It is more basic on the actually those historical sources than on the archaeological material, but I think it's very interesting to mention some of them, including stability and fidelity, particularly to this aspect of imperial context that I would like to speak today. When we want to introduce the topic, I would like to mention some of few key parts. As I said, I will focus on these 4 political entities, particularly emperors Ashoka, then Augustus and Domitian, Gaozu, emperor of Han, and in Sasanian Empire. And very important as well to understand, this will not be lecture about mirrors. Basically, I exclude mirrors from this story. Instead, I'm trying to focus about reflection from other sources that are not mirrors, or they're not made as mirrors, which could be water, both natural water or artificial water objects or creations, and stones that are usually polished, including some pillars and the buildings that I would like to emphasize a little bit more. So this is some of the key preconditions for this, and this is some of my hypotheses. I have a few ideas that I would like to test with you and to see how it's going on. The first, this is transformation of knowledge, as I mentioned, because we all know that natural reflection is related to politically induced public reflection, because the objects who are capable of visual reflection achieved surfaces possessing shyness, polish, and smoothness can be either natural or artificial. Naturally occurring sources, such as flat water bodies, for example, are liquid in form and horizontally oriented, while human-made reflective sources, such as polished stones, are solid and vertically actually oriented. Ancient empires situated along the Silk Road employed reflective materials for ideological purposes. So, for example, they used the Persian gardens, they used Mauryan and polished stones, Thermae in the Roman Empire. These architectural elements serve to convey the political, religious, and social ambience prevailing within these empires. The refinement of these practices became evident during the advent of the new imperial systems like Augustan Rome or Domitian Rome or Ashoka's India or Gaozu Han China. So this is the first idea, how actually they try to use this knowledge from, we can say, nature to politically controlled knowledge, as Foucault says, this power knowledge. Second is these technological advancements, which are associated with imperial and social values. They also find way in those monumentality or monumental reflective objects. This focus as a very important part with the architectural and the materials, because the buildings that are usually constructed by using reflective surfaces or designed to incorporate water elements have been employed to communicate social and political values. For example, Monica L. Smith and her team examined the Ashokan inscriptions in India, and they noted that the pillars were originally at the heart of population centers or in their immediate surroundings, indicated they were meant to convey power to the placement as well through the control of specialized craft making and engineering skills. Similar transformation can be observed in the city of Rome, which is later referred as a marble city, or actually in the Chang'an in China, which could be referred as a monumental city. So, based on these observations, we can consider reflective surfaces as an additional function of monumental objects. The third, the production of power and hierarchical structures within empires underscored the creation of expansive and permanent reflective objects and artifacts, which means that reflection has symbolic meanings, including orientation, size, and transparency of surfaces, including the observers itself and their engagement, which are related to their own reflection, and their self-image, which is linked to exposure hypotheses about the individual behavior and their attitude towards familiar objects, which we have by studies of the mirrors, for example, by Bloch, Corvallis, Metadermer, Knight, etc. So our behavior have been affected by our reflection. Fourthly, the study analyzes the nature as political and social construct, with also reflective capabilities of various materials. Reflection, which is inherent to certain materials, positions nature as a central concept for future research. This encompasses the understanding of nature as a distinct entity in those what we call ancient political entities, the examination of specific elements, for example, water within the nature and applications of those eco-humanities approach could understand reflective surfaces in the political and social context. Nature has those essential components relevant to reflection, including the world beyond humanity, which is reflected in depictions of animals and plants, for example, in the art and archaeology. But also, nature is related to weather and time, and materials themselves, what we call materiality, or even if you go further to object-oriented theory, which is related, for example, to quality of reflection and the composition of objects. And the last, but hopefully not the least for this part, this idea, or this my presentation, is going to compare and contrast our Afro-Eurasian empires by idea that we can contribute addressing the major research concerns, such as regionalism, nationalism spanning the continents, decolonization of classical studies, and globalizing archaeology and history, at least observed from my perspective. So those are key hypotheses that I would like to work on. And the public reflection is a concept that should have 7 conditions. The first that I would like to emphasize is difference between private and the public reflection. If we use the private, which is very often individual reflection, it is related to human image on the usually small mirror. Sometimes it's hand mirror or mirror on the stick or on the handle, where, except in some special conditions, usually we have visual connection with one mirror, just we as observers. While in the public reflection, we cannot control that we will be the only one who has this visual connection with the reflection. Instead, it depends about variety of aspects, and we have these 7 conditions. The first condition is size of the objects. So actually, those objects should be publicly visible and open access, including several visible pieces. So they provide impressive and massive surfaces for reflection. Doesn't matter, are there natural water bodies, such as lakes, rivers, or artificial water transportation, canals, pools, wells, tanks. Or if we go furthermore, pillars and cave walls, for example, are also important. These objects, they occupy some area and they're open visibly for the individuals from diverse social groups and also from diverse geographical regions, which means that they encompass multiple visible elements, including surface extent, individuals, which means people, animals, plants, environment, and landscape, including natural and artificial objects and structures, and the various spaces, including real, imagined, and symbolic spaces. Those components are integral to formation of reversed and reproduced image. So, which means that this public reflection is more focused on open and outdoor settings, which exclude these small, as I said, mirrors, who are usually related to our private reflection. Then it is related to fixed or at least long-term location, which is also another aspect. As we know, those polished stone surfaces, they are positioned within the specific domains. They have fixed placements and they actually have accessibility. Moreover, it shows their spatial orientation and visibility within the communities for communication, religious practices, or even political symbolism. The positioning in landscape allow for various viewpoints and angles, which means that the whole process of creation could be focused on, and also we have a person who can move around and who can see variety of his or her own or their reflections. Furthermore, as I said, these changeable directions could have different types of representations, individual and collective. And also, it's very important, it is related to different factors such as time, observer, also weather condition, landscape himself, and representation, which could be singular reflection of me or singular reflection of us as a group. Then we have, as I said, those collective and individual echoes that are related to this, about the individual and collective reflection, which means that collective reflection is not just the sum of individual reflection, it has his own entity, because we are also could be reflected as a group according to our social status, social identities, or for example, according to our gender, which could be related in some other aspects as well. And that it's related by number and position of the visitors at the given time, which is also important. And it is not neutral. Those individual and collective echoes are always influenced by our mind, which is also this meta word for reflection, like reflection of our mind, understanding of ourself, where we can ask the questions, who am I? How do I look today? How do I feel? How should I behave today? Furthermore, temporality and time are very important, and they are related to the angle of light sources such as sun, even moonlight, or artificial light, and they impact the quality, clarity, and the blur of our duplicate images. Time also influences the variety of audiences and the visitors near the reflecting surfaces, resulting in the contrasting individual and collective reflections. Weather conditions such as clouds, sunlights, or moonlight contribute to the diversity of reflected images, depending on the quality of light during specific months, hours, or seasons. And it brings us to space, landscape, and production of space, which is also very important part, because the changes of the landscape, such as growth and modification of the trees, flowers, environmental elements, influence the visibility of the surfaces and the quality of reflected image. The shape of surfaces, especially in those human-made objects, impacts the shape of proportion of the surrounding space. Dynamic developments in natural environment, such as construction work, tree cutting, land occupation, continuously transform actually reflective image. And the last, also very important, it is the additional function, which means these surfaces are not initially designed to be a mirrors. They are not designed to have a mirroring as a primary purpose. They have variety roles, and this reflection is a secondary role. Of course, we know that seas and water could be used for transportation, for fishing, for sources as a food, as a water, while the stone pillars could be used to utilize political power, spread religious beliefs, messages, ways of communication, etc. But both of them have this impact of being mirrors. So what I want to say, that by utilizing these large, big, unmovable objects, we also could have reflection, and this is shown by archaeological and historical sources as well. So let's start with archaeological sources. We have a plenty of them. Of course, I'm not going through all of them. I just mentioned some of them that could be used. Started from the term in the Roman Empire as one of the sources that basically connect in a certain way water as reflection, and marble as another part of reflection inside these pillars. Then those Lake Nemi, which is very famous for its reflection as well in the Roman sources. Then we have Great Bath in Mohenjo-Daro in India, or Dockyard in the Lothal in India as well, Persian ponds, or these famous Jian water containers, very well known, who have one of the roles to produce reflection from the water in ancient China, particularly in the pre-Han China, although during the Western Han, they have been also produced. This example is from Shanghai a little bit earlier. And then we are moving when the nature create reflecting parts. So we can find them the most clearly in the Vedic texts, where Askoparpola actually, he pointed out that mirror or water have been mentioned, and they clearly compared water and mirror. But also we have in another text, like in Changshu in the China, for example, we have this very clear connection between water and mirror, that both could produce the reflection, and also in the Roman part with the Homer, with Lucretius, and they even have some more interesting description, because they're not just mentioning sea as reflection, but also they compare sea as a marble, both Lucretius and Homer. And for example, Statius, he used the metaphor of sea for marble in Domitian's palace. So basically, what we can see that in the all of those different political entities, it can be very strict connection between reflection from the mirror and reflection from the water. And even Chinese character for mirrors shows this as the first character on the left. We see some kind of person who is observing his or her reflection. So just to make this situation clear, I will show the exact text furthermore. So for example, we have these sources also about the building those water surfaces, like wells, like canals, like reservoirs, like ponds. Even Ashoka on his pillar and the rock edict, he says, I did this, I built these ponds, I built canals, I built reservoirs, I provide wells. And it is written in some other sources. And as well, we have this in China, as I said, this connection between those tranquil water that is not floating and flowing, with actually mirror and reflection. And we have the similar in the Seneca. So as we can see here in the Seneca about reflection with the marble, with the pools, with water and mirrors. And we have this Changdongya Upasanid, where the Prajapati very clearly says that it is the same image in the mirror and same image in the water. So this shows, and we can see furthermore here, actually from the Persia, we also have the same, right? When men look at the mirror and the water, they see their own form. They explain this from religious perspective, of course, Zoroastrianism. And in China, we also have this particular in the Taoist perspective, and early China desire to connect the reflection on the water and reflection on the mirrors. It's very important, as you can see for just a few historical sources, that basically the same idea have been spread around the Eurasia, from China, India, Persia to Greco-Roman world. So connection between water and mirror. Of course, it is always added to certain aspects of religious elements, where it is related to being, to understanding of self, to positioning of self as a very important part. So just to see from the perspective of public reflection, it is actually shown that it is related to those ponds, to those lakes, to this kind of water which is tranquil, and we can add them to this connection with the building of these actually ways. So we can see, for example, that it is immovable and it is big and steady. So this follow the primary condition. And also we know that environment, including, for example, moon or light, could affect the reflection, which is mentioned in the sources as well, which actually is related to our theory. When we go to archaeological sources of the stone, we have Ashoka's pillars, we have Barabar caves, we have marble and this, in the Rome, in Basilica Emilia, in Solarium Augusti, and some other aspects. I will just try to go through this. When we go through these aspects of Ashoka, actually we can see basically that Ashoka's stone pillars produce reflection, and actually it is very clearly mentioned that they are on the inscriptions, that they are producing them and they are used for this. For example, in the sources, we have that Ashoka's pillar in Sarmat is bright and shining as a mirror and glistening as smooth as ice with their surface. So he was kind of a person who think in the stone and building these pillars to show not just reflection, but to show his religious messages and his power itself. When we have these kind of sources that are mentioning more or less these kind of reflections from Ashoka and from later period. And then in the Rome, we have different aspects where we can start with Suetonius and this quote to Augustus, I found Rome a city of bricks, and actually I left it at the city of marble, where we can connect it with the Virgil and his connection with marble and the sea, which is related also to Homer, or Vitruvius, who very clearly said about the polished with marble and or chalk. So, excuse me. And then very important to understand from this perspective that I'm speaking about is actually this recent research by different types of scholars, including David Ellman in 2022, who actually found the sources and queries and the find spots of marble around the Roman Empire, which means it is not just the story of the one city, story of the Rome. Instead, it is the story of larger part of the empire. And secondly, by UCLA scholar Diane Favreau, who actually discussed the position of marble buildings in the Rome. And after her research by Digital Humanities and the 3D mapping on the city of Rome, she noticed, very important, that the Augustan marble buildings are not so many of them in the quantity, but they're very clearly positioned in certain places in the city of Rome. So they make this kind of illusion of actually Rome as a marble city, which is also related to my idea and my theory actually of public reflection, where the marble have been used for setting up this power, this reflection, and producing the importance of knowledge and producing the way of obeying the rules. Because if you put it in the certain places, you got illusions that it is everywhere, as Favreau pointed out. And furthermore, we have very clear, actually, those elements that are polished stones, like these Barabar caves during the Ashoka were actually described as lustrous or mirror-like, and those discuss about we can see how those caves, which have those polished stones, pretty obviously could be related to individual and collective images, because the position of viewers indoors, but it's open space, are important factors for producing this reflective element. So because it's related to light inside the caves, with significant role of quality of reflected image. And then we can try to discuss from the perspective even of the archaeology of night and archaeology of light, where our moving, entering, and going out is also part of emotional and sensory experiences, as Skates and Dowd pointed out, including fear, excitement, silence, noise, and other sensations. So basically, the visitors in the cave could have what happened if they are disappeared from the view of the group, and those interplay of the lights and shadows and dark or semi-dark environment could be also important for the concept of public reflection. But also we have this kind of reflection of sound in the form of echo very often in the cave, which this echo element is also related to comparison of mirror images and also mirror of the mind. So this is just one part from India. Then we have also actually some elements from Rome about Domitian and his large mirrors, who have been also, we can say, in a certain way, polished walls, who have been used for kind of surveillance and for controlling the people, and actually the way how he can see in front and behind himself and create a certain surface for surveillance. And then we have in Persia, where this mythical context of surveillance is related as a wheel, whereas the wheel is a great mirror that shows all the things according to idea of constructing the world, where mirrors become also this kind of surveillance and magical lens. And finally, we move to China, where we have the emperor square mirrors, which is from the first emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, but also from the emperor of Gaozu, and it's found as a kind of the treasure. And according to this description, these mirrors have been used for controlling to see in the certain way people's emotions, and by emotions, including their fears, their lying, and their some other elements of their future behavior could potentially protect the emperor. So I think we are running of time, so I will try to jump to the conclusion just to understand this in the certain way clearly. My opinion that this concept of public reflection, which is based on these 7 conditions that I mentioned, could be applied to those 4 empires, because those various sources of reverse images have been used, including natural water surfaces, artificial water surfaces, polished pillars, rock-cut caves, marble buildings, etc. So water is obviously equated with the mirrors in the ancient text in all 4 empires. And we can find that those marble or Ashoka stone pillars are described as shining or mirror-like. When we put the positioning of these objects in specific environments and landscape, which are contributed to the production of space, where the visitors view them from different perspectives, which is of course influenced by weather conditions and time. So public reflection was a constant feature in both water and those polished sandstones. So this use of bright and flat surfaces actually substitutes for mirrors and gives some additional reflective tools which allow continuity of public space and public reflection. And this transfer of knowledge, or Foucauldian power knowledge, from natural to cultural sources over a long period in 4 different empires across the Eurasia. We can see that the use of public reflection is a political tool where those new empires or new emperors who would like to demonstrate their connection with the past, but also the promotion of new ideology. Doesn't matter if we are speaking about the Vedic, pre-Mauryan and Mauryan ideology, or Augustan imperial ideology of Rome, or Qin and Han in China. We can say that actually public reflection plays a significant role in those ideological expressions of the empires, which was continuously thread during the historical development of Afro-Eurasian empires. I would just like to mention very important also acknowledgements to the people who share some of their thoughts and express their gratitude. The first of all is Professor Monica Smith from UCLA, who actually encouraged me to start to do water as reflection during my stay at the UCLA and during her course about the Southern Asia and Ashoka and India. And second is Professor Lothar from Falkenhausen, to whom I discuss about the China and the Han actually reflection. And then my supervisor, Professor Ning Chang, was very supportive to express this idea as well. And then Professor Matteo Comparetti, an expert for Central Asia and Persia, and Rick Van Willik, an expert for Rome and Persia, who share some information about the sources. Finally, my wife Chen Yarong was very helpful to help me with translation of the sources, particularly Chinese and some other, and to help me to find even more sources to prove some of my theses and theories broader and stronger. Thank them all, and I'm very happy that they provide their big knowledge to me. Of course, all mistakes are just mine. Thank you for your listening. Thank you for your attention. Do not hesitate to contact me on my email, and I apologize again for my poor voice.